She married a billionaire stranger for money. But when she heard the music, she knew she was next. They say desperation makes people reckless. Emily Carter preferred to think of it as survival. Still, as the black SUV glided to a stop outside the Whitlock penthouse, even she wondered if signing her life away to a billionaire stranger was a step too far. The skyscraper loomed above her, cold, sharp-edged, reflecting a city that didn't care who it swallowed. Clutching her worn bag, Emily stepped onto the marble driveway, heart pounding beneath her calm exterior. Somewhere at the top of this tower was Damien Whitlock, tech mogul, billionaire recluse, a man whose name carried both power and shadows. She hadn't met him when the contract arrived. She hadn't needed to. The terms were clear. 2 years of marriage, no questions asked, in exchange for enough money to erase her father's crushing debts. But there was one clause that lingered in her mind. Do not enter the West Wing. The private elevator soared upwards, carrying her beyond the world she knew. When the doors opened, Emily was greeted not by warmth, but by silence and him. Damien stood by the window, a figure carved from shadow and steel. Tall, impeccably dressed, radiating control. He didn't turn as she entered, but his voice, smooth and precise, filled the space. "Miss Carter, you're early." Emily forced composure into her voice. "I was told punctuality mattered." When he finally faced her, his dark eyes pinned her in place. No warmth, no curiosity, just calculation, as if assessing whether the woman he'd purchased met expectations. "Good," he said, moving to a sleek table where a single document awaited. The marriage certificate. Without ceremony, he signed his name. Emily followed, her hands steady despite the chill creeping into her bones. It was done. "Follow me," Damien ordered, already walking through the penthouse. A masterpiece of glass and marble, beautiful but sterile, like a museum where emotions weren't allowed. As they passed a shadowed corridor, Emily's gaze caught on the double doors at its end. The forbidden West Wing. The air felt heavier there, colder somehow, but Damien's voice snapped her back. "This is your room," he said, opening a door to a suite larger than her entire apartment. "We will maintain appearances, events, interviews, public outings. Otherwise, we live separately." Emily nodded, her throat tight. She knew the terms, but hearing them aloud made them feel like chains. "One more thing," Damien added, his voice dropping. His gaze locked onto hers with a weight that made her chest tighten. "If you value this arrangement, never ask about the West Wing." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emily standing alone, a ring on her finger and 1,000 unanswered questions pressing against her mind. That night, sleep refused to come. The city glittered beyond her window, but Emily's thoughts were trapped within these walls. Why would a man like Damien need a wife he'd never met? Why guard a part of his own home like a tomb? Curiosity gnawed at her until she found herself in the corridor, barefoot, heart racing. The double doors loomed before her, silent and imposing. Her fingers hovered over the handle. "I said never." The voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Emily spun around, breath caught in her throat. Damien stood at the far end of the hall, his face shadowed, but his eyes glinting with something sharper than anger, fear. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Damien stepped forward, each footfall deliberate. "You were warned," he said quietly, his tone more dangerous for its calm. "I wasn't going to open it," Emily lied, straightening despite the pulse pounding in her ears. His gaze searched hers, unreadable. "Curiosity is a weakness, Mrs. Whitlock, and hiding behind locked doors isn't." A flicker, the briefest flash of emotion, crossed his face before he turned away without another word. Emily watched him disappear into the shadows, her heart still racing. Whatever Damien Whitlock was hiding wasn't just a secret. It was something that scared even him. And Emily knew one thing for certain. She hadn't just married a billionaire. She'd stepped into a cage lined with silk, where the greatest danger wasn't outside. It was behind those doors. Emily Carter quickly learned that silence was louder in Damien Whitlock's world than any spoken word. Her first night in the penthouse was sleepless, not because of the luxury that surrounded her, but because of the weight pressing on her chest. The weight of knowing she'd married a man who treated life like a business deal and hid behind locked doors. As dawn broke over Manhattan, Emily stood at her window, staring at a city she no longer felt part of. Somewhere in this glass palace, Damien was awake too. She could feel his presence, even if she hadn't seen him since the night before. On the marble counter, a note in precise handwriting awaited her. Charity Gala. Tonight, 7 p.m. Or something appropriate. D. No greeting, no explanation, just another order. By evening, a stylist had transformed her into the image of a billionaire's wife. A gown of midnight silk, diamonds at her throat, and a mask of elegance carefully painted on her face. But beneath the glamour, Emily's mind churned with unanswered questions. Why the West Wing? What was Damien so desperate to keep buried? As the limousine glided through the city, Damien sat beside her, silent, unreadable, his gaze fixed on a world only he understood. Emily stole a glance at him, searching for cracks in his armor, but found none. Whatever haunted Damien Whitlock, he had mastered the art of hiding it. The Langston Grand Ballroom glittered with Manhattan's elite, a sea of wealth, power, and perfectly rehearsed smiles. As they stepped onto the red carpet, cameras flashed, capturing the image of the enigmatic CEO and his mysterious bride. Smile, Damien murmured under his breath, his hand resting lightly on her back. They're already circling. Emily obeyed, letting her lips curve into a serene expression, but her eyes scanned the crowd. Whispers followed them like shadows. That's her, the new Mrs. Whitlock. I wonder if she knows about the last one. Has she heard the music yet? Emily's pulse quickened. Music? Another cryptic hint tied to the forbidden West Wing. While Damien was swept into conversations with senators and CEOs, Emily drifted toward the edges of the ballroom, where the gossip flowed more freely. That's when she met Veronica Hale. Tall, poised, with a smile that could cut glass. Veronica approached like a predator eyeing fresh prey. Emily, isn't it? She purred, offering a hand adorned with emeralds. I'm Veronica. Damien and I share history. Emily accepted the handshake, her instincts bristling. Pleasure. Veronica's gaze sharpened, clearly amused by Emily's composure. You're braver than you look. Most women flinch when they realize who wore that ring before them. Emily held her ground. I don't scare easily. A sly smile curved Veronica's lips. Then here's a tip. If you ever hear music playing when Damien isn't around, don't follow it. Before Emily could respond, Veronica vanished into the crowd, leaving a trail of perfume and 1,000 questions. By the time Damien returned to her side, Emily's mind was racing. Your friends have interesting conversation topics, she remarked lightly. Damien didn't look at her. Veronica feeds on curiosity. Ignore her. But Emily couldn't ignore the growing puzzle. Whispers of a past wife, a locked wing, and now music that wasn't supposed to exist. Hours later, back in the penthouse, Emily removed her jewelry with mechanical precision, exhaustion tugging at her body but her thoughts refusing to rest. Damien poured himself a drink, his tie loosened but his posture still rigid. Do you enjoy provoking me? He asked suddenly, his voice calm but edged with warning. Emily turned, surprised. I asked no questions tonight. You didn't need to, Damien replied, his dark eyes narrowing. Veronica knows how to plant seeds. Emily met his gaze, defiance simmering beneath her calm exterior. Maybe I'm tired of pretending I don't notice the ghosts in this place. For a heartbeat, Damien's mask slipped, a flicker of something raw flashing across his face before he shut it away. Some doors, he said quietly, should stay closed. For your sake. Without another word, he disappeared into his office, leaving Emily alone with the echo of his warning. As the city lights flickered outside, Emily stood in the hollow luxury of the penthouse, her thoughts tangled in the name she'd heard whispered all night. Isabel. Who was she? And why did her shadow still linger in every corner of Damien's world? Emily didn't know that by morning, a package would arrive, unmarked, silent. Inside, a single photograph of Damien, a woman with hauntingly familiar eyes, and behind them, a grand piano, The same piano hidden behind the doors Emily had been warned never to open. The package arrived at dawn. No sender. No note. Just a box placed at the penthouse door. Quiet. Ominous. Inside, Emily found a single photograph. Damien, younger but unmistakable, stood beside a dark-haired woman whose eyes carried the weight of untold stories. Behind them, a grand piano, ornate, familiar. Her stomach tightened. She knew where that piano was. Behind the locked doors of the West Wing. On the back of the photo, 2 words written in delicate script sent a chill down her spine. Remember us. Before she could think, Damien's footsteps echoed behind her. His gaze landed on the photo, and for the first time, Emily saw it. Real pain flickering across his otherwise impenetrable face. Where did you get this? His voice was low, controlled. It was left at the door, Emily answered, watching him carefully. Without a word, Damien took the photo, crossed the room, and locked it away in a hidden drawer, as if burying it could silence whatever ghost had followed him here. Is that Isabel? Emily asked quietly. Damien stilled. That pause told her everything. Our contract doesn't cover my past, he said, already walking away. By nightfall, Damien was gone, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts and the growing pull of the West Wing. That's when she heard it. Soft, haunting, the delicate notes of a piano drifting through the penthouse. Her blood ran cold. Damien wasn't home. Yet the melody, sad and beautiful, floated through the air like a memory refusing to die. Veronica's words echoed. If you hear music when Damien isn't around, don't follow it. But Emily had never been one to run for shadows. Barefoot, heart pounding, she moved toward the dark corridor. The music faded with every step until only silence remained. At the double doors, she reached for the handle. Locked. On the floor, a slip of paper peeked from beneath the door. Emily knelt and pulled it free. A torn sheet of music, yellowed with age. At the top, in that same delicate handwriting. For D, always. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just a room Damien avoided. It was a tomb for a love that hadn't let go. When Damien returned, his face was unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. Emily waited until the silence became unbearable. I heard the piano. Damien froze mid-step. Slowly, he faced her, his expression darkening. There's no piano music, he said quietly. I heard it, Emily insisted, placing the sheet on the counter. For a moment, Damien just stared. Then he folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket, as if hiding it would erase the truth. You're imagining things. I'm not blind, Emily snapped. You can't keep pretending. His composure cracked, just for a second. Pretending, he echoed bitterly, is what keeps the past from destroying everything. His voice wasn't angry. It was exhausted, haunted. Emily stepped closer, her voice softer now. Who is she to you? Damien's eyes met hers, and for once, the mask dropped entirely. Everything. The word hung in the air like a wound. Then just as quickly, the wall returned. Stay out of that hallway, Emily, for your own good. With that, he disappeared into his office, leaving Emily alone, again, with more questions than answers. As Manhattan's lights flickered against the night sky, Emily stared down the dark corridor. She hadn't come here expecting love. But now, love wasn't the danger. It was the past, alive, unfinished, and clawing its way into the present. And Emily knew one thing. The more Damien tried to bury his secrets, the closer she was to unearthing something that could shatter them both. The next morning, Emily found the penthouse emptier than usual. Not just in presence, but in spirit. Damien had left early, a text from his assistant notifying her of a business trip. No details, no return date. It felt deliberate, as if after last night, distance was Damien's only defense. Emily wandered through the vast, silent space, her thoughts heavier with every step. She wasn't naive. She knew grief when she saw it. But grief didn't explain why a man like Damien Whitlock would bind himself to a stranger with a marriage contract. Unless someone forced his hand. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from thought. A message from an unknown number. If you want answers, meet me at Café Delacroix. 11 a.m. Come alone. Her heart skipped. No name, no context, but instinct told her exactly who was behind it. Veronica. By 10:55, Emily sat at a corner table in the quiet French cafe, the hum of conversation blending with the clink of coffee cups. The door chimed, and Veronica Hale swept in effortless, predatory elegance in every step. "You're smarter than I thought," Veronica said, sliding into the seat opposite her. "I'm tired of riddles," Emily replied, keeping her voice steady. "If you know something, say it." Veronica smiled, a sharp, knowing curve. "Damien doesn't pick wives. He replaces them." Emily's breath caught, but she didn't let it show. "What do you mean?" Leaning in, Veronica's voice dropped to a whisper. Isabel wasn't just his wife. She was his obsession. A concert pianist, the darling of Manhattan's elite, until the night she vanished. Emily's pulse quickened. "Vanished? Disappeared without a trace," Veronica confirmed, stirring her coffee with unnecessary precision. "Police ruled it a tragic accident." Damien shut down. The West Wing became her mausoleum. Emily swallowed hard, the pieces clicking together, but one thing didn't fit. "Then why marry me?" Veronica's eyes gleamed with something between pity and cruelty. "Because of the clause in his father's will. Damien can't access his full inheritance or maintain control over Whitlock Enterprises without being married." A cold wave washed over Emily. So that was it. She wasn't a person to Damien. She was a requirement. "But here's the part no one talks about," Veronica added, her voice like silk over a blade. "You're not the first contract wife. There were two before you. Both left within months. Silent. Paid off." Emily's throat tightened. She thought she was clever for negotiating her terms, but she was just another name on a list. Veronica stood, dropping a business card onto the table. "If you really want to know what happened to Isabel, and why Damien hears music that no one else does, call this number. Ask for Detective Marlowe." Before Emily could respond, Veronica was gone, leaving behind nothing but the scent of expensive perfume and a storm brewing in Emily's chest. Back at the penthouse, Emily stared at the card, her mind a whirlwind. Damien hadn't just locked away memories, he'd locked away truth. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Damien. "I'll be home late. Stay out of the West Wing." No greeting, no explanation, just control. Emily's gaze drifted to the dark corridor. The piano, the photo, the music. She was done waiting. With steady hands, she pulled a hairpin from her bun, her heart pounding as she approached the double doors. The lock was complex, but Emily had grown up learning how to survive. Picking locks wasn't just a skill. It was a necessity. After tense minutes, a soft click echoed in the hallway. The door creaked open. Moonlight spilled into the room, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. The grand piano stood at the center, beautiful, untouched, draped in a white sheet like a ghost in waiting. Framed photos lined the walls. Isabel in concert halls, smiling beside Damien, her fingers frozen mid-performance. Emily stepped closer, her fingers brushing the keys. A single note rang out, clear, mournful. Behind her, a voice cut through the darkness. "I told you never to come in here." Emily spun around. Damien stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, they weren't filled with anger. They were filled with fear. But this time, Emily didn't flinch. "Tell me the truth, Damien," she whispered. "What really happened to Isabel?" The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Because in Damien's eyes, Emily saw it. The truth wasn't just tragic. It was dangerous. Damien's shadow filled the doorway. But it wasn't anger that froze Emily in place. It was the look in his eyes, a hollow reflection of a man standing on the edge of a memory too dark to escape. Her heart pounded as she faced him, refusing to shrink beneath the weight of his silence. "I heard the music," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chill creeping into her bones. "I saw the piano. I saw her." Damien's gaze drifted to the grand piano, still draped in its ghostly sheet. He stepped inside the room, every movement slow, as if the air itself resisted him. "This room isn't for you," he said, softer than she expected. There was no command in his tone this time, only exhaustion. Emily's throat tightened. Then why bring me here at all? Why marry me? Why trap me in a life built on secrets? Damien's jaw tensed. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, not to her, but to the shadows of the past. Because I thought I could control it, he murmured. Control the memories. The legacy. You were supposed to be safe. Emily's pulse quickened. Safe from what? His dark eyes flicked to hers, sharp and full of warnings. From becoming her. Silence pressed between them, thick and suffocating. Finally, Emily dared the question that had been haunting her since the first whisper of Isabel's name. What happened to her, Damien? He turned away, his hand resting on the piano like it might anchor him to reality. When the answer came, it was a confession wrapped in steel. She's gone. That's not an answer, Emily snapped, stepping closer despite the fear crawling up her spine. Did she leave? Did someone take her? Or, Damien's voice cut through her words, flat, final. I killed her. The air left Emily's lungs in a rush. Her vision blurred for a heartbeat as the weight of his words crashed over her. No, she whispered, shaking her head, searching his face for any sign this was some cruel metaphor. But Damien's expression didn't waver. Not anger, not remorse, just a man already buried beneath his own guilt. It wasn't supposed to happen, he said, his voice distant, as if reciting a story he'd told himself too many times. Isabel found out things she shouldn't have. About my family. About what this empire is really built on. Emily's skin prickled. So you silenced her? Damien's eyes flashed. Not with rage, but with something far more dangerous. Pain. You think I wanted this? His voice cracked, raw for the first time. I spent every day protecting her from the world I was born into. But some things, once you see them, there's no going back. Emily's mind raced, torn between fear and a strange pull of empathy. Damien wasn't just a monster. He was a prisoner of his own legacy. Why me? She asked, her voice breaking. Why drag me into this? Damien stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. But his eyes, those haunted, hollow eyes, held no threat. Only truth. Because the board demanded I marry to retain control. And I thought choosing someone with nothing to do with this world would keep you safe. Someone smart enough not to look behind closed doors. Emily's chest tightened. You thought I'd just smile and stay quiet? I hoped, he admitted, a bitter smile ghosting across his lips. But curiosity, it's what killed Isabel. And now, you're following the same path. For a moment, neither spoke. The piano stood between them, a symbol of love, loss, and the danger of knowing too much. Emily's hands trembled, but her voice held firm. I'm not Isabel. Damien's gaze softened, but it wasn't reassurance. It was resignation. No, he said quietly, but that won't matter if you keep digging. He turned, his figure retreating into the shadows of the corridor. Stay out of this, Emily, if you value your life. The words echoed long after he disappeared, leaving Emily alone with the ghosts he tried so desperately to silence. That night, sleep didn't come. The weight of Damien's confession pressed on her chest like a stone. She couldn't ignore it. Not now. Her eyes fell on the business card Veronica had given her, Detective Marlowe. Every instinct screamed to walk away, to survive. But Emily knew herself too well. With a shaking hand, she dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Marlowe. Her voice was barely a whisper. I need to know what really happened to Isabel Whitlock. A pause. Then, meet me in an hour. And don't let Damien find out you called. As the call ended, Emily realized she was no longer just a wife bound by contract. She was a woman standing at the edge of a secret people had died to protect. And now, the next name whispered in fear might be hers. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and old secrets. Emily sat in the corner booth, her fingers wrapped around a cold cup as Detective Marlowe slid into the seat opposite her. No introductions, no small talk, just a look that told her he already knew why she'd called. You're Whitlock's wife, he said flatly. For now, Emily replied, her voice low. Marlowe pulled a worn file from his coat and dropped it on the table. Faded photos spilled out. Isabel Whitlock, radiant on stage, smiling beside Damien. Then one final image, a shattered piano, stained and broken. She didn't vanish, Marlowe said. That's just what they wanted the world to believe. Emily's heart pounded. Damien told me he killed her. Marlowe shook his head. Not exactly, but he let it happen. He pushed a document toward her, a coroner's report with no official stamp, no public record. Isabel died in that penthouse. Blunt force trauma. But Whitlock money made sure the case disappeared. Emily's breath caught. The West Wing wasn't just a shrine, it was a crime scene. Why wasn't he arrested? She whispered. Because the person who did it wasn't Damien, Marlowe said grimly. But he covered for them, protected the family name, protected the company. Emily's skin prickled. Who was it? Marlowe hesitated, then leaned in. Whitlock Enterprises isn't just tech and wealth. The family's tied to things darker. Offshore dealings, blackmail, disappearances. Isabel found out. She tried to run. Emily swallowed hard, fear settling deep in her chest. Why tell me this? She asked. Why now? Because you're already in too deep, Marlowe replied. You hear the music, don't you? That's not imagination. It's a warning. The same one Isabel heard before she died. He slid a flash drive across the table. Everything I've got. Isabel's files, names, dates. Proof they'd kill to keep buried. Emily stared at it, feeling the weight of a decision she wasn't ready to make. If you're smart, Marlowe added, standing, you'll disappear before they decide curiosity runs in Damien's wives. He was gone before she could ask what scared him more, the truth or the people who owned it. Back at the penthouse, Emily locked herself in her room, heart racing as she opened the drive. Folders appeared, one marked for D. With trembling hands, she clicked it. A video played. Isabel, pale and hollow-eyed, sitting at her piano. If you're watching this, Isabel's voice whispered, I didn't make it out. Emily's chest tightened as Isabel looked directly into the camera, defiance flickering beneath fear. They'll say I vanished. But once you know what Whitlock really is, once you hear the music, you're already marked. The screen went black. Emily sat frozen, adrenaline surging through her veins. This wasn't just a family secret. It was a death sentence. Her phone buzzed. A message from Damien. We need to talk. Now. Her blood ran cold. Had he found out about Marlowe? About the drive? Emily's gaze shifted to her laptop. The proof of a conspiracy far bigger than she'd ever imagined. Whatever Damien wanted, this wasn't a conversation between husband and wife. It was survival. Emily's footsteps echoed through the penthouse like a countdown. Damien was waiting. His message had been simple. We need to talk. Now. But every word felt like a loaded gun. As she reached his office, Emily's heart pounded. The flash drive in her pocket burned against her skin. Isabel's warning echoed in her mind. Once you hear the music, you're already marked. Damien sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, his usual composure fraying at the edges. His eyes met hers, darker than she'd ever seen. Close the door, he said quietly. Emily obeyed, locking herself into whatever this conversation would become. How long have you been digging? Damien asked, voice too calm to be safe. Long enough. His gaze flicked to her pocket. Marlowe. She stayed silent. No need to confirm what he already knew. Damien exhaled, rubbing his hand through his hair. I warned you, Emily. You warned me to stay blind, she shot back, anger rising. I'm not Isabel. I won't be silenced. His jaw tightened, but when he spoke, his voice wasn't cold. It was tired. You really think I'm your enemy? You covered up a murder, Emily snapped. Damien stood, moving around the desk until he was close enough for her to feel the weight of his presence. I covered up a message. Emily's breath caught. Who killed her? Damien hesitated. Then the truth dropped like a stone. My brother. The room spun. Emily staggered back. You never said you had a brother. I don't. Not anymore. His voice was sharp, bitter. But before he died, he made sure Isabel paid for knowing too much. Emily's mind raced. You could have gone to the police. Damien gave a hollow laugh. You don't survive the Whitlock name by trusting the law. He turned to the window, Manhattan skyline reflecting in the glass, a city he ruled but couldn't escape. When Isabel discovered what my family was involved in, offshore accounts, disappearances, she threatened to expose them. My brother silenced her. Emily's chest tightened. And you buried it all. I buried him, Damien corrected. And I've been cleaning up the mess ever since. Silence settled, heavy with everything unsaid. Emily looked at him, really looked, and saw a man trapped between guilt and survival. You married me to protect your empire, she whispered, but also to protect me. Damien didn't deny it. I chose you because you had nothing to do with this world, he said, because I thought you wouldn't ask questions. Emily's pulse raced. But I did. He nodded slowly. Which means you're now a liability or a partner. Her stomach twisted. And if I say no, Damien's eyes darkened, then I can't guarantee how long you'll stay safe. The threat wasn't his. It was the world he'd been shielding her from. Emily's fingers brushed the flash drive. Isabel's last stand. Proof of everything Damien wanted buried. She met his gaze, defiance hardening her resolve. I won't hand this over, but I'm not going to the press either. Not yet. Damien's brow arched. What's your plan? I want the full truth. You tell me everything. And when it's done, I decide what happens. For a moment, Damien just stared. Then a flicker of something like respect crossed his face. You're braver than I thought, he murmured. Or stupid, Emily countered, her heart hammering. Damien moved to a hidden panel, revealing files stamped with red seals and a gun resting beside them. Then welcome to the real Whitlock legacy, he said quietly. But remember, once you're in, there's no getting out clean. Emily swallowed hard, knowing she'd just stepped into a game where survival wasn't promised, and trust was a currency more dangerous than secrets. The files on Damien's desk weren't just documents. They were confessions written in ink and blood. Emily stared at them, each folder stamped with names, dates, and words like classified, erased, and worse, asset disposal. This is what Whitlock Enterprises really is, Damien said, his voice devoid of pride. A corporate empire built on more than tech and finance. It's control, silence, making problems disappear. Emily's stomach churned as she flipped through the pages. Politicians, CEOs, whistleblowers, people who got too close to secrets they shouldn't have. Just like Isabel. You were born into this? She asked, her voice barely steady. Damien nodded, leaning against the edge of the desk, watching her process the weight of generations of corruption. My grandfather started it during the Cold War. My father perfected it. By the time I was old enough to understand, I was already part of it. Emily's fingers trembled as she reached a folder labeled Isabel Whitlock. Inside were surveillance photos, transcripts, and a final page marked termination authorized. Tears blurred her vision. They planned her death. Damien's jaw tightened. She didn't stand a chance. My brother was just the executioner. Emily slammed the folder shut, rage and grief battling inside her. And you kept this going? I tried to dismantle it, Damien snapped, his calm cracking. But you don't just walk away from this machine. You manage it, or it consumes you. Emily's breath came in shallow bursts. So what now? You made me part of it. Damien's gaze darkened. You already are. Silence fell, thick with inevitability. Then Damien pushed a smaller file toward her, her name printed across the front. Emily Carter, clearance pending. Emily recoiled. You had a file on me? I have a file on everyone, Damien said quietly. When the board forced my hand to marry, they vetted candidates. You were chosen because you had no connections, no power, someone who could disappear without noise if needed. The words hit harder than any threat. So I was disposable, she whispered. At first, Damien admitted. But things changed. Emily's heart twisted. She wanted to hate him. Needed to, but beneath the betrayal was something more dangerous. The way Damien looked at her now wasn't the gaze of a man protecting a pawn. It was a man afraid to lose the only person who saw beyond his empire of lies. Before she could speak, Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and for the first time, Emily saw fear flash across his face. They know, he muttered. Who? Emily demanded, her pulse spiking. The board. Marlowe's alive, which means they know you've seen the files. Damien moved fast, grabbing the gun and tossing a burner phone toward Emily. We have to leave. Now. Panic surged through her. Run? You're Damien Whitlock. Where can you hide? Damien's expression hardened. I'm not running. I'm buying us time. The lights in the penthouse flickered, a signal Emily didn't understand, but Damien clearly did. They'll send cleaners, he said grimly. People who erase problems like us. Emily's mind raced, but survival instincts kicked in. She pocketed the burner phone and followed Damien to a hidden elevator she hadn't known existed. As the doors closed behind them, sealing off the life she thought she understood, Emily turned to him. "Why are you protecting me?" she asked, her voice cracking under the weight of everything. Damien didn't look at her when he answered. "Because I failed Isabel. I won't fail you." The elevator descended into darkness, a descent into a world Emily could never climb out of. When the doors finally opened, they weren't in Manhattan anymore. They were in an underground bunker, walls lined with servers, weapons, and escape routes. "This is where the real Whitlocks operate," Damien said, his voice echoing off cold steel. "And if we're going to survive, you need to decide." Emily's chest tightened. "Decide what?" Damien turned to face her fully, his eyes sharper than ever. "Whether you want to expose this and die fighting it, or help me burn it down from the inside." The weight of his offer crushed the air from her lungs. Expose the truth, honoring Isabel's legacy but signing her own death warrant, or align herself with a man she could never fully trust to destroy a legacy she never asked to inherit. There was no right choice, only survival. As alarms began to blare somewhere above them, signaling that time had run out, Emily looked Damien in the eyes, the man who was both her captor and protector. "I'm not dying for your family's sins," she said, her voice steady. "Show me how to end this." Damien nodded once, not with triumph, but with relief. "Then let's finish what Isabel started." The bunker shook as distant explosions echoed through the underground tunnels. Emily's pulse raced, her hands gripping the flash drive, the last surviving piece of evidence that could bring down Whitlock Enterprises. Above them, the cleaners were wiping away every trace of the penthouse, erasing the life she'd known. Damien moved with precision, inputting commands into the server's terminal. Lines of code scrolled across the screens, decades of secrets, blackmail files, financial empires collapsing in real time. "When I hit this key," Damien said, his voice low but steady, "the entire Whitlock network burns. Offshore accounts, surveillance, every skeleton my family's hidden, gone." Emily's chest tightened. It was what Isabel died for, what Damien had been too trapped to do alone. But nothing came without a cost. "They'll come after us," Emily whispered. "The board, everyone tied to this." Damien's dark eyes met hers. "They'll come after me. You could still walk away." Emily almost laughed, a hollow, disbelieving sound. "After everything, there was no walking away clean. I crossed that line the moment I married you," she said softly. For a moment, the weight of unspoken emotions filled the space between them. This hadn't been love, not in the fairy tale sense, but somewhere between fear, betrayal, and survival, they had become something else. Allies, maybe more. Damien's finger hovered over the keyboard. His jaw clenched. "Once this is done, there's no undoing it." Emily stepped closer, placing her hand over his. "Then do it." With a final breath, Damien pressed the key. The servers sparked, alarms blared, and across the world, the Whitlock dynasty crumbled in silence. Not with a headline, but with deletion. It was over, but survival was just beginning. "Come on," Damien urged, grabbing a duffel bag. "There's a secondary exit through the tunnels." As they navigated the labyrinth of steel and concrete, Emily's mind raced. She had no illusions. They weren't heroes. They destroyed a monster, but the ashes would still burn. When they emerged miles outside Manhattan, the city skyline smoldered in the distance. Not from fire, but from the invisible collapse of power structures no one would ever know existed. A black SUV waited at the edge of a deserted road. Damien opened the door for her. "This will get you as far as Montreal. After that, new identities, clean slates." Emily frowned. "You're not coming?" Damien shook his head, a faint, bitter smile on his lips. "I'm the last Whitlock. They'll chase me until they get what's left of my blood." Emily's heart twisted. After everything, he was choosing to be the shield once again. "Running won't save you," she said quietly. "I'm not running," Damien replied. "I'm making sure you live." For a moment, neither of them moved. The wind carried the scent of rain and something heavier, the weight of goodbye. Emily reached into her jacket, pulling out the flash drive. "There's still a copy." Damien's brow furrowed. "If they catch you," she continued, pressing it into his hand, "make sure they know you're not just a Whitlock. You're the man who ended them." For the first time, Damien's facade cracked. Not with fear, but with something resembling hope. Without another word, Emily climbed into the SUV. The engine roared to life, carrying her toward an uncertain future. In the rearview mirror, she watched Damien fade into the horizon, a man bound by his name, but freed by his choices. Hours later, as dawn broke over the Canadian border, Emily pulled over, staring at the sunrise with a mix of exhaustion and relief. She was alive. Isabel's ghost was finally at rest. The empire that had destroyed so many lives was gone. But Emily knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was a beginning, one forged in fire, betrayal, and a marriage that was never meant to be real, but somehow became the reason both of them survived. As she drove toward a new life, Emily allowed herself one final thought of Damien. Not as the billionaire who trapped her, but as the broken man who taught her that sometimes love isn't about promises. It's about sacrifice. And in a world built on secrets, that was the only truth that mattered.